Mackey and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
We didn't win the championship, so obviously where we are now isn't good enough. I don't know what a shakeup looks like or what changes will be made or could be made. But obviously, as is, it wasn't good enough. We came up short against a team without their starting point guard and shooting guard. Will Barton didn't play, and Jamal Murray didn't play, and we came up short. So obviously, where we are isn't good enough to win the championship if it's not good enough for us to get out of a first-round series.
Well, we have a few ideas for Dame.
Reckless speculation.
Hello, everybody. Hello, friends. Jim Nantz was in full form yesterday on that 8-hole playoff. I don't know if you guys caught that on CBS.
I was shooting over 120 at the course, but yes, I did hear about it.
Yeah, I went to the Twins, and then I came home and watched something. There was another game on I watched instead. So
just like a random, just like lacrosse, or just,
Horse racing?
Baseball. No, I was not watching horse racing. I was watching another baseball game. I'm sure it was an excellent end to the golf tournament, though.
Boys, a lot of things happened over the weekend, and we'll get you Mackey and Judd's statements today on this Monday. But Damian Lillard might be available now. Damian Lillard has made it known through various reports and sending feelers out to various NBA insiders with. So he DM'd Colin Cowherd over sometime over the last week. He's putting feelers out because he's kind of sick of. He's like Kevin Garnett in 8 years of playoff misery for the Timberwolves. Right? They couldn't find him a great secondary player. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the most clutch, lethal offensive players in NBA history. And I don't know if you guys saw this. I purposefully did not send you this so I could spring it on you at the start of today's Mackey and Judd show from hoopshype.com. Have you seen this from hoopshype.com?
I don't think so.
The article is called Teams Worth Mentioning in the Damian Lillard Sweepstakes.
Reckless speculation.
No,
I like where they're going.
There's some obvious ones. I mean, like the Philadelphia 76ers are on this list, and they even go into detail about trade packages, like they could send Ben Simmons and some future first-round picks to Portland. That'd be very exciting for all parties, right? The Warriors are on this list. A couple of lottery picks. They could trade Wiggins, Wiseman, all kinds of things. The Boston Celtics are always looking to shake things up, and maybe they could swing a trade. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves are also listed on hoopshype.com.
Reckless speculation.
One team that could make somewhat of a compelling offer includes Minnesota. Here are the assets that they would likely have to consider giving up. D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, the draft rights to Leandro Balmero, and up to 4 first-round picks. So I guess multiple questions off of this, but thank you, Hoops Hype, for at least considering. I mean, I feel like whenever these big trades are discussed, it's like the Timberwolves are just sort of laughed at and put in the corner, even though they did pull the trigger on a D'Angelo Russell trade already in the last year and a half. But my guess is if you went to Portland and said, all right, if this thing is unworkable with Dame, if he's just sick of the front office and just sick of one-and-done playoff things, if you went to them with D'Angelo and Anthony Edwards and multiple first-round picks and Leandro Balmero, they would not hang up the phone on you. In fact, they might have to say yes immediately. That's a ridiculous package. So first question, would you consider this conversation if you were the Minnesota Timberwolves?
When it comes to this guy, I'd consider any conversation. So I wouldn't shut anything down or hang up a phone immediately because the Ben Simmons talk is fine and it's fun and he could contribute to the team as it stands right now if he was traded here, certainly from a defensive standpoint and his all-around game that goes, beyond shooting because he really can't shoot. But Dame is an interesting one because he changes the dynamic of your franchise instantly. And if you've still got Cat, certainly makes it an intriguing trade possibility. Now, would I give up 4 first-round picks and Ant? No, I would not. Would I consider the first-round picks? Yes, I definitely would. Ant's about the only part of that trade that really rubs me the wrong way because we don't know what his potential is yet, and it could be off the charts. So if you want Ant, I don't think I'm giving you as much as hoopshype.com wants or thinks that Dame is worth. It's not that Dame's not a great player. It's that we don't know Ant could be as well. And if I'm going to give you 4 first-round picks and Ant and D'Lo, it's a bit rich for my blood. That being said, I find the intriguing thing about this trade is, again, Ben Simmons helps you and it helps your roster as currently constructed, probably. Dame changes the dynamic completely. And that's where this one to me crosses a different threshold of what would your team look like if you had this guy and you had Cat and let's say you could keep Ant. What do you look like?
Reckless speculation.
All right, Dex. So this is the first time we've sprung this on you as well. What goes through your mind when you hear that type of package?
So that's a humongous haul. Dame Lillard is probably one of the clutchest shooters of all time. What I would be more inclined to do, because Stephen A. Smith threw this idea out a month ago, what if you just did Cat and a first-round pick for Dame Lillard?
Wow.
I would rather put Dame, D'Lo, 2 cold-blooded shooters with Anthony Edwards. I don't want, honestly, I'd rather do that. I don't want to give up all that. I would be more inclined to do the Towns trade for Dame Lillard, and also Dame has a big contract that starts after next season, but I would be more inclined to trade Cat before I would trade Anthony Edwards and multiple first-round picks. That's where I would start.
So I don't think a D'Lo, Ant, Damian Lillard trio works. I just think there's just, I guess then Ant would be your 3, but all 3 of those guys need to handle the ball. All 3 of those guys need 15 to 20 shots. Cat does too, but he can play from different places on the court than those 3 guys. But I think, to your point, you're trying to figure out a way to make this puzzle work. What would you have to do? And money is a huge consideration because Lillard just signed a 5-year max contract. He's going into year 2 of this 5-year max contract, and it'll escalate up from I want to say $42 million this upcoming year, and then up to over $50 million in the last year of the contract. So I think the average of the 4 years remaining is $48 million. And so the only way that you could acquire him is you have to give up something that equates to $48 million or so the next few years per year. And so that would either be Cat or D'Lo. And even those 2 guys are going to fall short of that number. So you'd have to give, just in terms of money alone, you'd have to give up either Cat or D'Lo to make it work, almost certainly. The other thing to consider here is Damian Lillard is 31 years old, and your 3 guys that you have currently hitched your wagon to are all 25 or under. Cat's 25, going to be 26. I think D'Lo might have just turned 25, and then Ant 19 years old. And so your window with those guys is still opening. Dame's window, you could argue even just the way that he plays and just how many minutes are on his legs, that he probably only has maybe 1, 2, or 3 years left of guaranteed top-level play. And so it's a little bit like the Jimmy Butler conundrum from a few years ago. If you're going to pull the trigger on a guy who's 29, 30, 31 years old, you're now all of a sudden you're going from, hey, we can see winning on the horizon with Cat and Wiggins and Levine, and won't this be great? We can keep building this thing for 2 or 3 years, to the minute you make that trade for Jimmy Butler, you have to win now. And we knew the window was going to be short with Butler. We didn't realize it was going to be as short as it was because he just demanded out and was cantankerous. But the minute you pull the trigger on a Damian Lillard trade, you have to be ready to win and contend in the Western Conference immediately, and ideally more than Portland has been winning, because otherwise he's going to want out of Minnesota too, right? These are all hypotheticals, but the only way I think that you can win immediately is if you keep Anthony Edwards or D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns. I think you almost certainly would have to give up at least one of those guys to get Damian Lillard. Not almost certainly. You would have to give up one of those guys. Can you keep 2 of them and bring Damian Lillard in would be the question. And so for me, it would be if you could trade D'Angelo Russell, Leandro Bolmaro, and then a bunch of first-round picks, would that be enough for Portland? That all of a sudden puts you into the conversation in the Western Conference.
I don't think I can trade Ant. I just don't think I can. There's too much potential there. He's a first overall pick. I think it'd be very fair if you acquire Dame for the expectations to rise. In fact, I love that. They should. Good. But Ant's the type of player who also could be your franchise player for a long time, and so I'm not trading him. But D'Lo, yes. The first-round picks, probably. And look, I mean, this is the type of thing, too, that with new ownership coming in here, this franchise is going to need. They want to pop. The whole thing about, well, they'll be good eventually. Bleep that. If you can get good immediately, and the Butler thing blew up because we didn't know that Butler was, for lack of a better term, a psycho. I don't think Dame is.
That, yeah.
Well, yeah, but I don't think Dame is. So I sort of like the immediate pressure being applied. D'Lo's a good player. I have no problem trading him. The draft 4 first-round picks is a ton to give up, but again, in a trade like this, it might take that. So I think if you could have Cat, you could have Ant, and you could dream to have a guy like Dame. Look, yes, that's pressure, but I think it's good pressure. Because we can't be afraid in this town because Butler didn't work that you now can't make that trade.
So now that we're, 10, 15 minutes into the show here, I think there's probably a lot of people that are either listening or watching on the SKOR North YouTube channel here that are just staring blankly at us or listening and staring blankly off in the distance and wondering, are you guys serious? How much did you guys drink this weekend?
A lot.
You really think the Timberwolves are going to be in the mix for Damian Lillard? So what do you have to say to people that scoff at the idea that we're even entertaining this type of speculation?
Stop putting your expectations so damn low and raise them, children. Raise your expectations. Do you know what? We are in the center of this summer, and it's great?
Reckless speculation.
Eichel, available. Who's tied to him? The Wild. He might not come here, but I don't care about that. He's tied to your team. Ben Simmons, tied to your team. Might not come here, still don't care. But guess what? There is a realistic possibility that there could be a package put together for a guy like that. And if Dame is going to be on the market, God bless Hoops Hype for putting the Wolves among the potential suitors. Quit. If you're staring at us blankly right now, being like, this is just so stupid, I'm going to go listen to people who will tell me about the home team that I love so much because I love all the players on the home team. Go Miguel. Go Nelson Cruz. I got one thing to say to you. Raise your damn expectations, because if we're going to win championships in this town, and God knows I want championships because it's fun, then you have to include yourself at the cool kids table. Don't go sit at the sports geek table every time you go to lunch and say, hey, what should we talk about today? Go to the cool kids table, assert yourself, and sit at that table and talk Dame.
The cool kids are talking about Damian Lillard, right? That's
Correct.
what they're talking about. The
Yes.
What's the nerdy table talking about? What is the uncool, low self-esteem
You know what they're talking
table
about right now?
Probably
Well,
Miles Turner. Probably Miles Turner.
No, I know what they're talking about right now. Well, the Twins won 2 of 3 against Cleveland.
They have a 12.5% chance now to make the postseason.
They can make the
Fangraphs.
Yeah,
It's great.
don't dismiss them. Don't dismiss the Twins. You know what? We're dismissing them. We're moving on.
I love it. I love when Judd gets just a
Me too.
just a stick in his ass. It's just great.
I'm sitting there with all these Fultons the last 3 days drinking. I'm watching a bunch of nerds be like, "Oh, this couldn't happen. This can't happen." I'm so tired of it can't happen. And by the way, we're being tied to players like this by national outlets too. It's not
That is
just
correct.
us.
Yeah.
Well,
also,
forerunners, but yeah.
Also, Gerson Rosas came in here 2 years ago, and right out of the gate, like introductory press conference, all the interviews, he said, "We are hunting for superstar players. We want to acquire capital, and we're going to use draft capital and any sort of contractual pieces we have, and we are on the hunt for superstar players." And so they went out. Now you could argue that D'Lo is not a superstar, but D'Lo was coming off a great season in Brooklyn. He was a former number 2 overall pick with a ton of upside, still has a ton of upside. And one of the first things he did, Gerson Rosas, in the first year as being president of basketball operations, was pull the trigger on a massive trade, doing 2 things that people didn't think he would do. 1, be able to unload the Andrew Wiggins contract, and 2, being able to bring in somebody of the caliber of a D'Angelo Russell. And I would also say, our first reaction, I think, in this state as Minnesota sports fans is to say, anytime a big name pops up in free agency or in trade speculation, is to just immediately be like, well, why would they want to? There's no way that's going to happen. You guys are just clickbait. You guys are just, this is ridiculous. Why would this be a thing? I mean, just look in the last 4 years, the types of players that have either been traded for or have signed here on their own, right? Jimmy Butler. The Wolves pulled a blockbuster move for Jimmy Butler. The Vikings signed the top quarterback on the market for $30 million, ironclad, guaranteed per year in Kirk Cousins. D'Angelo Russell was traded for. Josh Donaldson signed a mega contract. And Nelson Cruz has signed twice in free agency with the Minnesota Twins. So when I see Dame Lillard wants out, in my own mind, like the old Phil Mackey, who's been sort of, who's grown up in this, we don't deserve great things, Minnesota sports fans, is like, well, there's no way. And yeah, there's not much of a chance he lands with the Timberwolves. But that's what we should have, the front offices should be thinking about trades like this. Mm-hmm. And we should be, like Judd said, raising our expectations for when a player like that becomes available. It shouldn't just be an automatic shutdown of, well, that'll never happen. Why not? Of all the teams right now that have assets to trade for a guy like Damian Lillard, the Timberwolves are probably top 3 in terms of like assets they can trade and then the ability to actually win games with Damian Lillard once they've traded away those assets. And so does it guarantee anything? No, but I love the fact that he has made it known that he probably wants out of Portland, and the Timberwolves are mentioned in this hoopshype.com article.
And here's my biggest thing, and here's what I'm sick of, and I'm guilty of this, and I need to stop, but we all need to stop, okay? When I watch the playoffs in different sports, right, and like the hockey playoffs, or last night, the Bucks, who, by the way, aren't that far from here in the NBA playoffs, and I think to myself, oh yeah, the Wolves are in this same league. Like the Wolves could be in this playoff. And then I'm like, no, they can't. They really can't because they're not there yet. I'm so sick of that. I'm so tired of just assuming that our teams, why can't they be in a conference finals? They can. Why can't they be in an NBA finals or a Stanley Cup finals? They can, right? Like the Montreal Canadiens are a great story, but there's no reason why the Wild can't be that team at some point very soon, if not now. So like, again, I'm challenging myself. Raise your expectations. How do you get to, hey, you know who's playing tonight? The Wolves in the conference finals. And I know you're laughing right now. They can't. No, they actually can. Yeah. So like the whole thing has to be raised.
I've got one more little reckless speculation nugget for you guys here.
Reckless speculation.
Unfortunately for the Timberwolves, while they watch the Bucks and the Hawks and the Suns are probably going to make it now out of the Western Conference. Well, the Wolves are mostly golfing, right? I mean, that's the reality. They've been golfing for several weeks now. And hopefully they're golfing with their PXG clubs, the Gen 4 clubs, the best clubs that PXG has ever made. You can find them inside that golfer's paradise that is PXG Minneapolis. They've got clubs in multiple different price ranges for different, caliber of player. And they've got all kinds of great summer apparel if you want to look the part. And maybe you're like Declan and I, and you're probably going to shoot a hundo or higher. But you want to look good doing it. PXG Minneapolis and Southdale Center. Find out more at pxg.com/Minneapolis. Our friend Dane Moore from the Dane Moore NBA podcast, he reports, quote, "I've heard it will take multiple first-round picks for the Wolves to even get into the conversation when it comes to a Ben Simmons trade negotiation." Not to mention the fact that you'd have to find $30-ish, $35 million in money to also send over, like in contracts. So if the conversation started with Philadelphia to buy low, by the way, on broken shot but great at a bunch of other things, Ben Simmons, and it starts with 2 future first-round picks and, let's say, D'Lo, Beasley, obviously if you could do it for 2 first-round picks, Beasley, Rubio, I think it's definitely a conversation you have. But if that's sort of the starting point for negotiations, what do you say to Philadelphia?
I say let's stay in touch because I'm very curious what any other team would trade as well. And I think the asking price that Dane's talking about, which right now is probably correct, might come down a little bit because the fact that this guy shot, and you know what? You might think it can be fixed. I don't know. But the fact that this guy in the playoffs gagged as badly as he did from a shooting standpoint, I think is going to cause a realistic check among most teams. Now, one team might pay that price, but I think we're in the ballpark there. It's just a little bit too rich, but I wouldn't dismiss it. So if it went Beasley, if it went D'Lo, Beasley, I'd give him a first-round pick for sure. Do I give him 2 first-round picks? Now, if it's Rubio, that one, if it's Rubio, Beasley, because the Beasley thing, and I know he can shoot, but there's been enough off the court stuff where I'm definitely not married to him. And so if I could trade those two, I might consider 2 first-round picks. My point being is, again, I wouldn't hang up the phone, but I wonder if that asking price might come down just a little bit if it's D'Lo instead of Ricky.
Yeah, I wonder. I'd have to look more at Philadelphia's roster, but if let's say it were D'Lo, I think a D'Lo Beasley draft pick type of a package is an immediate conversation starter. And then if it's me, if I'm Gerson, I want something back also. And I think to make the salaries work, you'd have to get something back because Beasley plus D'Lo is a lot more than what Ben Simmons makes. And so then, and I'm just spitballing here, then is the conversation like, could they kick back? Could you swap shooters, basically? They've got Seth Curry under contract in Philadelphia for $8.1 and $8.5 million next year and the year after. He's 30 years old. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA. He's probably a better shooter even than Beasley is. But could you swap shooters? Sorry, you guys get Beasley. We get Curry, and then you swap D'Lo first-round pick for Ben Simmons. I mean, that seems attractive. I don't think you can give up that much shooting if you're the Wolves. I don't think you can trade for a non-shooter as great as he is at everything else and then trade basically your 2 best three-point shooters in Beasley and D'Lo. Not that you can't find some shooting, but like those guys are heavy rotation minutes guys who are taking a large chunk of your three-pointers. But I don't know. I'm totally spitballing, but Seth Curry, kind of a journeyman. He's bounced around, and he's just become a really, really good 10 to 12 points a game three-point shooter who makes a lot less than Malik Beasley does. So just spitballing.
Yeah. 2 first-round
Speculation.
2 first-round picks, D'Lo and Beasley seems a tad high to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
1 first-round pick. Now we're talking a little bit more.
2 first-round picks, Rubio, Beasley. Okay. But then if
Yes,
you're
that's
Philadelphia,
right.
you're trying
Yes.
to assess then if you're
Agreed.
Philadelphia. This is where a third team has to come in. Because if you're Philadelphia, your whole goal is to continue to try and win a championship next year and replace Ben Simmons with some combination of players or a player that could work better with Joel Embiid.
So if you made that trade today and it was a first-round pick, Beasley and D'Lo, how much not different, how much better do you think your team is on paper right now if you make that trade and you're Gerson?
I'm going to pull up the NBA trade machine here.
I'm surprised you didn't do that.
He's been actually doing it all weekend. Yeah. On Friday, Saturday.
Well,
he's just been
was
sweating off pounds and then doing ESPN trade machines like cocaine. Like,
It
that's
is
basically
brutally,
it.
yeah. I am a transplant Minnesota sports fan now, and I am very swazzy here in Seattle. Give me a second while I just want to pull this up. Put a couple of these in here. Minnesota,
It's gonna
Philadelphia.
blow up.
So we're going
blow up out there. It's overheating.
So we're going. Give me the first one again. Let's go.
Which
D'Lo.
D'Lo, Beasley.
So Beasley's 13.4. And then can we add draft picks? I don't know how this works. All right, and then they would give Ben Simmons. I'm gonna make them kick Seth Curry back just for fun.
Okay.
Just for fun.
It's a
Curry,
trade
it's
machine.
finally a Curry on the Wolves. I'm down for it.
Do they? Okay, dumb question. Do they not let you
14
add
years.
draft picks in here?
I thought they did, but I wasn't sure. I thought that the ESPN trade machine allowed you to do that.
If they don't, just walk across the street here and go complain to the Wolves guy that created it.
All right, we're gonna try this trade.
Go to Target Center.
Ooh. This
Works, doesn't
trade
it?
is successful.
That trade worked.
Okay, so Ben Simmons and Seth Curry equals $38 million. D'Lo and Malik Beasley equals $42 million. And then I think if you're the Wolves, obviously you'd have to give up for sure another first-round pick, and maybe that goes to a different team. I don't know if there's a third team involved here. Because Philadelphia, not that they wouldn't be interested in a first-round pick, but they might want to leverage the first-round pick for a player that can help them win in 2022. So I'm just saying, the Wolves hired the guy who created the trade machine on ESPN.com. They hired him to literally sit there in a room for like 10 hours a day and just plug things in and then pick up the phone and call people, right? Beep, boop, 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 boop.
Hey, plug the Dame trade in there.
Okay, hold on.
Plug our Dame
You're
trade.
just calling shots. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
That's It's my show, too,
It's
okay?
half your show.
Like,
This
I
is
mean,
correct.
I didn't see your name in
Nope.
the show
No,
when I
I
woke
don't.
up this morning. And I looked.
I'm that little.
Like, I look
curly
every day. I was like, okay, it's
ampersand.
still Mackie and Judd.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, so Dame.
I'm just the nameless man on this show.
So what are we doing here?
Nameless
We're
boy.
going Dame for what do you want? What do you want to give up?
D'Lo.
All of the first round picks.
Yeah, D'Lo.
Poor
and-
D'Lo. I love how D'Lo. Like he's a good player, but he just
Yeah, but you're going to put him in these trades.
every team that acquires him is like, oh, this is great. We get to maximize D'Lo, and then a year and a half later, they're like, oh, we like D'Lo, but wait a second, Dame's available. This is amazing. And the Nets went to the playoffs with D'Lo as their leader, and like immediately they're like, oh, bye D'Lo,
Goodbye.
see ya. We're not going to sign you in free agency. We're going to clear out some space for Durant, Kyrie, eventually James Harden. All right, so we're going to go D'Lo. Mm-hmm. Now, this has Dame Lillard's current salary. His salary keeps going up and up and up starting next year. But what else? So we're going Dame, D'Lo. They don't have Bolmero on here because he's not on the roster. So it's
Okay.
kind of tough to do this trade machine for Dame.
Throw in
'Cause
Beasley. Throw in Beasley, too. We'll give him I mean,
You just want
well, and you're going to give him like 4 first-round picks, my God, which aren't going to
which
go in
you-
the trade machine.
And you can't
so.
really enter those in here. So, and then we're going to need some money back here to make this work. So I don't know who's a
Just take the worst highly paid Blazer.
Enes Kanter. I mean,
I'd just take a
he's
bad.
still good. He's still a good player.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's going to have to be a worse player than that.
Let's just see what happens here. I love it. So, by the way, Enes Kanter is really good still. This trade machine is ridiculous. So we just traded D'Lo and Beasley and then a bunch of first-round picks for Dame Lillard and Enes Kanter, and it improved the Wolves by 20 wins next year. So,
Oh, sweet.
boom, there
Okay.
it is.
There we go. We fixed
Super
them.
easy.
We have fixed them.
See, I told you. Raise those expectations. Love it.
Speculation.
My God. So,